Hey there, Abigail. The purpose of this video is to give you some feedback on your job description. And as I look at my reflection from the screen here, there's an awful lot of glare on my glasses. So I'm going to commit one of the cardinal rules of speeches by not making very good eye contact, because it's going to probably be very distracting to you to be seeing the screen glare in my glasses. That doesn't do so bad there, even though we're not making eye contact. Before we get into this, let me encourage you to save the document file that is attached to this feedback to your computer, and go in and find the file that you had originally. Does that help any? Yeah, that may be a little bit better. Go find the file that you had originally submitted to me with your warehouse clerk job description and delete it. The version that you sent me is old, and it's no longer relative to what we're doing. And save this file that I sent you back as the starting point for any changes going forward. I went in and changed the format of it a little bit. I made some minor aesthetic corrections and some changes of some words. I've added a few sentences and so forth. So this is where I want to start. When you make changes, send that file back to me. Also print the PDF file, because that's got my scratchings and my notes on it. It's going to look something like this. And this is what I'm going to be referring to as I'm talking through this video. If you've got a printed copy of it, you can look at it with me while I'm talking about it. That said, probably about 12, 13 more minutes here as I talk through all of this stuff so that you'll understand what it is that I'd like you to do. First of all, pretty good job on this job description. A 90 is very, very good, with the understanding that most folks who take this class have never done this before. So to get the detail that you've got, granted, I gave you a template to go with, but you had to change the template. That was just for format and an idea of what to do, but you had to come up with the content. First thing on the job summary, you've got a pretty good one here. I would avoid using phrases like lower level. That indicates that some folks maybe aren't as important as others. So you might just rephrase that to other warehouse employees. But let me get you to reevaluate maybe what the clerk does. I don't see this as a management position based on the title. This would be one of those lower level warehouse employees. So you might eliminate that first sentence altogether. But what you want to do in the job summary is basically what you've done. Look at the essential functions, come up with the main ideas that those functions fall into. The main ideas of a warehouse clerk is to receive goods, to store them in a logical, orderly fashion, to retrieve them when people on the sales floor need them, and perhaps to send stuff out when it needs to go back to a vendor or whatever. So I mean, it's a couple of basic functions, and that's what you want to communicate in your job summary. And you've done that pretty well. Somebody who's reading this ought to be able to read these few sentences and say, I'm interested, yeah, let's keep reading, or no, I'm not interested, let's go on to the next one. You've done a pretty good job of that. In the essential functions now, take those main ideas from the job summary and go into more detail about the things that you're going to do on a regular basis that help you to succeed at receiving trucks and inventorying things and storing things and whatnot. So what you've got on the essential functions is really pretty good. I've added one at the bottom. I've added some verbiage at the top that talks about reasonable accommodations and so forth. And then I've just kind of eliminated the S at the end of the word: ensure, make, take, follow, perform, identify, so forth. But there are a couple of these changes in here. I've noted that you might change it a word here and there, and I don't think I changed it on your copy. So look through this thing pretty detailed and make the changes. Look for anything else that might make sense. And even though it looks good the way it is with the job summary and with the essential functions, think about it from the perspective of the potential candidate to hire. Is this telling them everything that they need to know? You know a lot about this job because you created it. But if you block that out of your mind, or you give this to somebody else and say, read over this and tell me if it gives you a pretty good picture of what you'd have to do in this job, or if it leaves you with questions. If you come up with those questions or get somebody to give those questions to you, you can update this thing with little bitty things here and there that really makes it super effective. In a lot of cases, that job summary and these essential functions is really all you're going to have in a job description for a lot of companies. I've asked you to do the job context because I want you to think not only from an HR perspective as to how do you summarize it and list out the essential functions of what they'll be doing, but how do you understand the environment in which it'll be taking place. And how do we answer some of the basic questions that a candidate's going to have when they take this job? That's what the purpose of the job context is. And each one of these little items answers a question that they might have. Under supervision received, the question is, I can look as a candidate on an org chart and find the box that says warehouse clerk. Who do I report to? Who's in the box on top of me? And what you've done here pretty much answers that question. You'll be working directly under the office manager. You do say that that manager will be on hand. I would prefer as a candidate, not just to know that he or she's going to be on hand, but that his or her office is 20 feet down the hall. So it's not just occasionally on hand, but permanently located on site where I can get to that person. You've told what they're going to end up doing, training, questions, tasks, whatnot. And you've also said that when they're not in the office, they can get in touch with these people by phone and email. I think you've done a pretty good job with that. If you'll add in that little piece about under the office manager who will have an office in the warehouse area where you'll be working. Available guidelines is a parallel to that almost in a way. As a new employee, I'm going to have lots of questions, and I don't want to go to my boss every single time I have a question. That'll get embarrassing. That'll be annoying to the boss. Sure, the boss is going to be happy to answer a couple of questions, but if I am constantly having to come to the boss with questions, she's going to say, I might have made a mistake in hiring you. There've got to be other resources I can go to get my questions answered. So under available guidelines, what I want you to do, granted, the example that I gave you of the HR assistant had language kind of like this, but that person didn't do this part right. And in the video that I had submitted originally, I suggested that this is one area of that pretty good job description that could be improved. Under available guidelines, I want you to talk about what resources are available to the warehouse clerk so that he or she doesn't have to keep bugging the boss. There might be employee handbooks that I could go to find answers. There might be policies and procedures manuals that I could go to. There might be a company intranet where I can Google something or search something within our database to pull up information that I need. There may be mentors available. There may be seasoned veterans in the warehouse that I can go to, but so that I don't have to keep going to the same person over and over and over again. What other resources have you created that will help me answer my questions? That's what goes in available guidelines. So get rid of the sentence that you've got there and put in a couple of sentences that just kind of talk about what other resources are available. Now, under accountability and consequence of error, you've done okay with that. Certainly we want to adhere to guidelines and consistency with our core values. But what I'm interested in as an employee is I see what you want me to do in the warehouse, but I'm going to make mistakes. What are the penalties for making mistakes? So in this section, you might say the kinds of things that could create problems are not doing a good job of inventorying merchandise as it comes in, or not checking the quality of stuff as it comes off of the truck, and not recognizing and identifying broken goods, putting things in the wrong place where you're not going to be able to find them later, shipping the wrong things to customers. Those are things that we need to hold you accountable for. Doing those things right will help you fill the essential functions. But not only knowing that there are things that could conceivably go wrong that might be relatively common, I need to know what the consequences are. Gosh, if I don't identify to the truck driver that these things are broken and I receive them, then I'm stuck with them. I've got to pay for stuff that I can't sell. So that's going to be loss of income for our company. Think about what the consequences are financially, reputation to our company, even as an individual. You're going to get reprimanded for this. Could you be terminated for this? This is kind of a gloom and doom, but it's a realistic picture. This job may sound like it's not that important as a warehouse clerk, but it really is, because if you do it well, it helps the company. If you don't do it well, there are consequences both to the company and potentially to you. Under personal contacts, who are you going to come in contact with every day? I may not want to be in a position, even in a warehouse or something, where I'm by myself all day long. Who am I going to come in contact with? You've indicated the warehouse manager daily, warehouse employees daily, but there are other people that you're going to come in contact with. And we want to be as comprehensive as we can, maybe 4 or 5 different groups. You will certainly come in contact with vendors and with truck drivers. You will certainly come in contact with people from your sales floor and people from accounting that you'll have to give reports to, and you'll have to get information from on what to bring out of the warehouse to the sales floor. I'd like to see you list those kinds of things. You'll have to go to meetings. What are the general guidelines of these meetings, who you're going to be meeting with and how frequently. That's what I want to see in personal context. Expand this out a little bit to include more of the people, both internally and externally, that this person is going to come in contact with on a regular basis. Then under supervision exercise, you've got the warehouse clerk again, it's sounding like it's a role that's like more of a manager than a clerk. When I picture a clerk, it's somebody who does the paperwork, not somebody who makes the decisions. So it may be more likely in that first sentence to say that as a general rule, this person doesn't directly supervise officially anybody, but there will be a lot of informal occasions where this person will provide guidance, which is kind of like supervision. You've addressed that in the second sentence. The training for new warehouse employees. Maybe we've put you on a committee where it's your job to provide input, and maybe we've even asked you to lead that committee. That's a supervisional type of role. So move the focus a little bit off of the managing of people onto the more informal roles of supervision. Under physical demands, you're on the right track here, but you got to get a little more detail. A large amount, how do you define that? Standing, walking, lifting. You'll have forklifts and hand trucks and things like that, but we're going to expect you to be able to lift regularly 50-pound boxes up to shoulder level height. That's more specific. If I'm applying for this job and you say a large amount of lifting, I don't know if you mean 200 pounds or 30 pounds or whatnot. So be a little bit more specific. You indicate machines to assist, but you also want to talk about, is it going to be a hot environment? Is the warehouse air conditioned, or are you going to be sweating a lot? That's going to tire you. Is it going to be very stressful in terms of 4 trucks at the same time that you have to get taken care of? Anything that can create physical problems for you. Under work hazards, obviously we have to comply with safety, but there are other hazards related to this job. We certainly want to say that we're safe in our working environment, that we treat our people well, but here's where you need to talk to the employee very honestly about the hazards. Certainly a hazard is that if we don't do a good job of putting things on our racks of goods, they can fall, and that creates a hazard. It's also a hazard if we spill liquids or something, because we can slip, oil and things like that. You want to brainstorm a little bit what those kinds of hazards are and try to list those out a little bit here. Personal demands, like physical demands, except in the sense that these are the things that could eat into our personal time, our time with our families. So you want to talk, I would get rid of that entire paragraph that you've got there and talk about things like, what are the working hours? Do we need you to work overtime regularly? Do we need you to work holidays? Do we need you to work weekends? Do we need you to be on call? Those are the kinds of things that get into the personal aspects of this job that impact our ability to spend time with our families. Do you have to travel at all to meetings, or do you need to periodically go with our delivery people to deliver things because it's too heavy for one person to lift? Those are the kinds of things that I want to know about under the personal demands, especially if that takes me away from my family or adds time to the job. If I'm traveling, does it typically just the day? Is it overnight? That sort of thing. All right. Under knowledge, skills, abilities, other characteristics, look back at your essential functions. What kinds of knowledge do I have to have? Yeah, I got to be able to read and write, certain those kinds of things. I got to be able to count so that I can inventory. But the ability to make decisions on what needs to go to the floor, to be able to make decisions about when I need to clean things or how I need to reorganize things, perhaps. The skill of making those kinds of decisions, the ability to lift stuff, all that kind of thing. You're pretty good on this. I would just say build it out a little bit. Why do I need counting skills? Why do I need reading comprehension so that I can understand the packing lists, counting skills so that I can inventory my material and reorder things, that sort of stuff. A little bit more detail there. Under minimum qualifications, position requires at least a high school diploma, GED. I think that's fine. Experience. Do they have to be able to operate forklifts, or can we train you to do that? I could see where a clerk we could bring in who's never driven a forklift before, because it may not take more than a few hours or a week to train them on that. So you might say forklifts and other equipment. The experience, 1 to 2 years experience is preferred, but it may not be that it's required. And what you've phrased here is must be means it's required. If I can't drive a forklift, I can't apply for this job. Prior warehouse management experience desired but not required. That's fine. The rest of it, I think, is pretty self-explanatory. Again, I really just wanted to really focus you in on a couple of things on how you can make this a really top-notch, for our purposes, job description. If I haven't answered some of your questions, shoot me an email or give me a call. Otherwise, take that doc file that I've given you back, go in and add these things in and make these changes, trying as best you can not to change anything related to the formatting. And then when you're done with it, save it and email it back to me. And I'd like to get that. I know it's late as I record this on Wednesday night. I'd like to get it back by Thursday night. Hopefully these changes aren't real big and you can do them fairly quickly. If I can get all of these things back from all 14 of you by Thursday night, I can get my IT guy to load them Friday, and you can start getting resumes and appointments for interviews Friday afternoon, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, and start planning your time out. And we'll talk about what's next once we get these things loaded. Hope that makes sense. You've done a pretty good job with this, and I'm looking forward to seeing how you revise it. Take care.